Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 245 of The Team House. I'm here with Dave, and I'm Jack. And our guest on tonight's show, actually coming back for the second time, is Greg Coker. Greg served in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, where he was a Littlebird pilot, and he has become on his way to becoming an expert blade maker. No. You showed us some stuff that's really impressive. We're going to talk all about, but where to start? I mean, we did a whole episode with you talking about your military career. You want to just go over a little bit about your background for just a couple minutes before we launch into where you are today?
You bet. Yeah, and thanks guys for having me back, and it's an honor, and doggone, I love talking with you guys and sitting with you. But yeah, I like most young men, we start out, we don't quite know where we're going or what path we're going to take. So I enlisted in the Army, and I always wanted to fly helicopters. So after a couple of years, I put in a flight packet and went to Fort Rucker, got accepted, flew Cobras for one tour in South Korea, 517 Cav. And then I went back to the 101st. I enlisted, went to 327th Infantry in the 101st. In 86, and then came back to Camel, flew Apaches for a couple years, and then put in my packet to go to the 160th, and got accepted to come assess. Was successful in that assessment, and flew AH-6s in B Company First Bat for 15 years. And at my final board for the assessment, the colonel had asked me, he says, well, last question was, well, Greg, what do you want to fly? And I said, sir, I will fly kites out of a hot air balloon if you want me to. and that pretty much set, the rest for that career in the 160th. Greatest aviators, greatest pilots, crew chiefs, armament dogs, we call them dogs, or armament personnel, but they keep the guns a-humming. The guys keep our helicopters going, and but yeah, it was, again, that MD-530 is the greatest helicopter ever made and saved my life one day that you guys know. But yeah, and then 9/11 hit and we all got really busy for the next 8 years for me. I did 11 combat tours, got shot down in 04. And yeah, I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Now, we had you on like over 2 years ago. It was episode 74.
Wow.
Which is like reaching back.
Yeah.
We talked about your book. Is it Death Waits in the Dark?
Correct.
Yeah, Death Waits in the Dark.
Six Guns Don't Miss.
Six Guns Don't Miss.
Yeah.
I highly recommend you guys read it. It's a fantastic account of, Greg's life in the 160th. It is on Kindle right now and Audible, yes. But there aren't any hard copies out.
No,
correct.
They sold out, but I'm going to have some more printed first of next year. So probably hardback and a softback. And
I'm going to say right now, because I use Kindle Unlimited all the time. Greg's book is free on Kindle, I think, and he still gets paid if you read it. So check it out, read it. Great book. Great episode 74, but let's, we don't want to redo all of 74 because we want to talk about your knife stuff. But for the people who haven't heard about, who haven't watched the episode yet, even though they will,
sure.
Can you give us a little bit, like, what was it like for you when you first got to the 160th? What was the training pipeline for you there?
Well, when you go through an assessment, so it's a week long, and it tests you mentally, it tests you physically, and it tests you your flight aptitude. So once you go through the assessment, and you're either a go or a no-go. So and back in the days, the attrition rate was pretty high. I had 4 guys in my class. I was the only one that graduated or finished, but it's always every day's a check ride, and still today, you know, I would just say, why am I here? And every day I would think, okay, I would get fired today because I would do something stupid. And so, yeah, it's a hard job. It's a tough job. And we support Rangers and Delta. And that's this country's, you know, premier force to go to war, bar none. But, and you come up through the 160th, you're a basic mission qualified aviator. For me, I was a gun pilot. But it takes us anywhere from 18 to 24 months to teach a guy how to shoot. Mm-hmm. So, and we're held to very, very high standards, as you all know, on our shooting and how close that we shoot to friendlies. So all of our training is live fire. There are people running on the ground, and that's how we do business. And that's why we're so successful in combat operations in this 20+ year war. You know, we've shot, I mean, I've shot less than 15 meters in front of friendlies in combat. Mm-hmm. So, but the ground force trusts the AHs, and we trust them. So yeah, that's and as far as me personally, I just wanted to protect my brothers on the ground.
Yeah.
That we were, you know, they've called us angels of death, the killer eggs, right? You know, all the different names over the years. But when we got on station, it was to help those guys.
Can you tell us a little bit about the killer egg, the Littlebird?
Sure.
Its history in the military, because really, it's probably the only place that it's flown, right? Is the 160th?
In the military.
Well, in the 160th, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, yeah.
In the early years, the helicopter was developed by Mr. Hughes in 1956, and it came out, and the Army designates all our helicopters with American Indian names. So this was the Cayuse, and then the designation was AH-6, so observation helicopter, and then the 6. But it's a Hughes 500 was the original nomenclature of it's a civilian helicopter. And over the years, it flew in Vietnam for many, many years. I've met several of the guys that flew the Loach. That's another name that the grunts gave it. And, I mean, it saved their lives. It saved my lives. But Mr. Hughes developed that aircraft with safety in mind. And that if during a crash sequence, and if you look at the aircraft without the tail boom, it looks like an egg. Mm-hmm. And that was his whole concept for the engineering of it, is for that cockpit to stay in contact if it did roll, you know, end over end or side by side, that the pilots in the cockpit would stay safe. So it, you know, over years it transitioned into gunships, and then the 160th took it in 1981 after the failed attempt of the hostage rescue in 1980 in Iran. And Colonel Beckwith, then the commander of Delta, wanted Army aviators to fly Army helicopters to support them. Mm-hmm. So when that came about in 81, that they chose the AH-6, they armed it with miniguns, and then they had the Blackhawks, and that's what was going to go on the next one. So again, through technology, now it's the M8 or AH-6 M model. I flew the J models and the J heavies, and then there's also the MH-6 Littlebird. So that's A company. B company is the gun company in the 160th. And then the MH-6 Littlebirds have the planks on them, and I still say customers, where the ground force will sit on the pods, and they can put, you know, 5 or 6 guys on there and a dog, and they put those helicopters in places I would never even dream of landing, but they are by far the best best pilots on the planet. And yeah, it was, yeah, they scared me watching them because we'd be overhead, you know, protecting the force, and I'm like, they're not going to land there, and they would land there. So yeah, they land on roofs or streets. Or
what was the decision, or why do you think the decision was to arm this very small observational platform?
Maneuverability. that thing, that helicopter is, and I always use, it's the Ferrari, the Lamborghini of helicopters. It can get around, it can turn, it's fully aerobatic, and you hang a couple of Dillon M134 guns and rocket pods on it, and now we can shoot, and in seconds we can get right back on target. And we always fly in pairs, so a lead and a trail. And and the ground guys call it the fur ball. They're like, man, you watch the AHs of the fur ball, because we're shooting and turning and yanking and banking, but we got to get that helicopter around and re-engage that target if that's what that fire supporter wants us to do.
Yeah.
And if there's a big battle like Haditha Dam, it was just, there's bad guys, here's the friendlies. We're going to shoot bad guys until we run out of ammo, or then we'll go to M4s and start dropping hand grenades on them, whatever the case. So
I was always impressed with the advanced aiming technology you guys had on those birds.
Yes, technologically advanced.
Yes.
And that's funny. I was just talking to some fellas about that the other day, but I watched in my tenure there at B Company that they're always bringing technology to us. Hey, can we, Apache's got a HUD, the Cobra's got a HUD, Apache's got the HDU, or the guy can look and point a gun, or we use a grease pencil, an Army issue black grease pencil mark on the windscreen. And Fred Horsley once said, we had engineers there, they were like, well, we want you to test this, and we think this is better and faster. And Fred summed it up. He said, the human brain is the fastest computer on this planet. And an AH-6 gun pilot needs nothing but a grease pencil. And he held a grease pencil up. But that's what we use to shoot. And I can put a rocket in a door at 400 meters because that's the standard that we're held to. And we shoot a lot. But
it's the Red Baron method of marksmanship.
Yes. Yeah.
The old Kentucky windage.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I've got a lot of stories in the book, and we've been real proud of the book. We've sold over 10,000 copies.
Wow.
And I read something not long ago. It says, and I self-published the book, and they said that a first-time author that self-publishes sells 300 to 400 copies in the life of the book.
Probably, yeah.
And we've sold over 10,000. And I thought about this and talked with my wife about this, and we donate 100% of all of those proceeds, and we've donated over $50,000 to date to nonprofits that support vets, first responders, and their families.
Wow.
And it's cool. Yeah, we love doing it. Death waits in the dark.
So even though it is on Kindle Unlimited, it's better if people buy it. They have it.
Yeah.
They own it.
I like to hold a book.
Yeah.
I like to sit there and read it.
And
Like
then
Jack's books.
Who did the Audible for? Who narrated?
I read the Audible.
That's great.
Yeah. Kyle Lamb, Sergeant Major Lamb, he was like, you got to read it. You got to read it.
Yeah,
It's got to be you. But I'd, reached out to a couple buddies like, hey, could you read this book for me? Yeah, man. No, you need to read the book. So, I read it. And, it's been good.
So get the Audible, because you get to sit with
Greg's
Greg's honeyed
himself.
voice. That's right. Greg's honeyed voice on your drive. And look, if you listen to it in bed, we're not going to judge.
No, we won't. But I get calls all the time, guys be like, dude, I'm driving along listening to your book, man. It's like you're sitting right here, or you're sitting at the fire with us, or we're listening to it. So, it was good. It's hard. It was hard to do, too. It took me like 7 days to read that. You're only good for about 3 hours a day.
But people love that. They love to hear, your voice and hear the man himself telling the story.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
When the next edition of the hard copies come out, we'll get a few for the studio here.
Absolutely.
So when you retired from the Army, tell us a little bit about like transitioning out of the military and sort of like what that process was like.
Wow, for all of us, it's a tough process, and I went into my own, did my own thing. I did firearms and tactics training, safety, security, emergency response. I worked for Kyle Lamb for a bit, Viking Tactics as an instructor, and Yeah, and I just kind of, went along and made my own way and tried to help other guys, young vets that just either did their time and got out, or guys that retired, and to help them transition in. But there wasn't anything easy about it, and I'm still not transitioned out. I mean, we all miss that our tribe, our teams, or so that camaraderie that we had in the military, especially in our organizations. Yeah, and then I guess it was less than 2 years ago, year and a half or so ago, but I had all these guys I served with, or fellas that I knew, started knife making, and several of them for years were like, "Hey, you got to try this, Greg. You got to try this. It's it's medicine. It helps us." And so we all have lives. We get busy and we go through these different phases and different walks. So I had a good friend of mine, Jared Johnson. He only lives about 20 miles away. They're in Jacksboro, Texas. Known JJ for years, Marine sniper. And he was a relatively new knife maker. He'd been making knives about a year, and he kept pestering me. He's like, come over to the forge. Let's hammer some steel. So I did one day. It was August. And I was like, wow, this isn't too smart. It's August in Texas. It's 115. We're going to crank up a forge that's putting out, 150-degree temperature, and we're going to hammer steel. All right, good. So I did. I went over, and he handed me a railroad spike, and he had a coal forge. And I told him, I said, I want to learn how to do this the way they did it 1,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's what he recommended too. So it's all part of that learning process. So I did. I stuck that railroad spike in that coal forge and started hammering it. And I hammered it into something that somewhat looked like a knife. my first one. But he's a great teacher. And I told him, I said, I do recall, when I was a kid, probably 12 or 14, I found an old lawnmower blade and got Dad's hacksaw out and probably broke a blade or two and cut something out that somewhat looked like a cutting tool and, made a knife. But so from that day forward, I was absolutely hooked. And it was, to be truthful, it was therapy for me. And I really got a lot out of that. And then it hit me one day. I was like, okay, that's why all these guys are doing this. It helps us, and it's art, and it's science, and it's mathematics, and it fires all these neutrons and things in our brain to help our brain and to help us as men. And so I spent probably a month working with Jared and learning different techniques and learning how to forge and learning how to make a sheath out of kydex, or how to do pin placement, how to grind a knife, and how to sharpen a knife. So these are all the things that, go with knife making. And I came home, I bought myself a forge, a little bitty old grinder off some website somewhere, and an anvil, and a 4-pound and a 3-pound hammer from Amazon, and started heating and beating steel. And then I'd sit down and I would draw designs, of what I always used, or what I thought would be a useful tool for anyone, everyone, a hunter, a police officer, a soldier, a Marine, those type of things. So I approached it as, what will be a useful tool for the person that wants this blade. And I learned how to sharpen. Unknowingly to my wife, I would go and get old kitchen knives, and I would sit there on the grinder, and that would do work. Throw that in a bucket. Honey, have you seen my kit? No, I haven't seen any of those things. And then I reached out, and this industry is phenomenal because all these people want to help you. Mm-hmm. They want to tell you how to do this, unlike other industries that some of us are familiar with. But they just embrace you. And so I want to learn how to make Damascus. Well, who's the Jedi of Damascus in this country? Steve Schwartzer. So I met him, talked to him. He says, yes, come to Florida. I spent a week out there. John Horrigan. He lives about 3 hours away, unfortunately for John. And I was like, hey, man, I need some help. Okay, come on. Or he'd call. I was like, hey, how are those prison ships coming? And I was like, dude, come on, man, give me a break. They don't look like prison ships, you know? But John would hammer on me pretty hard. A dagger. I want to learn how to make a dagger. The dagger is the hardest, most difficult grind of any knife because you have to grind 4 sides of that piece of steel. All your lines are supposed to meet up and match up. And so Bill Harsey was the best in the country, so I called Bill Harsey. Hey, Mr. Harsey, I'd like to come out and learn how to grind a dagger. Well, you come on, you know. So, yeah, Edie and I went out there, spent a day with him, and yeah, just so many. Chris Williams, another Wilmot Grinders. I went out and did a class with Chris for a week and learned more Damascus techniques and made a chef knife out there. So, yeah, it's very refreshing.
That's amazing that all of these like super talented guys who've been doing it forever is like, yeah, come out to my shop and I'll show you.
Yeah, it just blew me away because I was very standoffish. I guess, well, what do you want, or what do I have to do for you, or nothing. No, they want to
teach the skill.
Yeah, they want to pass that knowledge on.
Yeah, it's not like Daniel Defense or Glock or HK are going to invite you out to like learn how to.
Right. Yeah, and I would tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm 20 years behind. I'm 63 years old. I'm 20 years behind everybody. I got to hurry up.
Yeah.
Because I want to learn this, and I want to be the best, and I want to make the best tool. I want to use good steels and learn what's right. And trust me, I've got buckets and buckets and boxes of stuff that didn't work and didn't. Okay, yeah, that doesn't work. So yeah, don't harden steel and try to drill it.
What do you think it is about blades, whether it's swords or tomahawks or knives, that certain guys, like a lot of guys, just geek out about? That I probably own 16 knives, and I don't use them for anything other than to open packages.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's in our DNA. It goes back to when we drug knuckles.
Yeah.
In the first...
Last week, you mean?
Yeah, the first... Pro Magnon that chips a blade like something out of stone to go get food, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, and guys and gals both, they like a style. How does it fit their hand, or what am I going to use this for? Am I a hunter, or whatever the case? Am I going to open boxes all day long with it? So but yeah, and there's just so many choices out there today. There's so many great knife makers, and so yeah, it just depends on that person, and what they're looking for, and what's pleasing to the eye, and does it stay sharp? Does for police officer, military, hey, can I pop a lock with this thing, or pop a windshield, or open an MRE box, right? But I don't think there's been any knife kills probably since the 40s in World War II. I know of a couple of knife fights in GWAT, but yeah, I don't foresee anybody taking a dagger out and taking down sentries here.
I think you come to the conclusion pretty quickly that, because I think we've all, especially initially in the GWAT, we all carried really nice, fancy knives for that.
Well, I carried 4 or 5
for that trench warfare. Yeah. But then after you realize, well, my primary has to go down, my secondary has to go down, and then I'm probably in it. And so, can I, grab, is it accessible? Like it really, like, just the practicality of it after a few ops pairs down.
I would say though, although the possibility of like killing a kraut in a foxhole is pretty low nowadays. Right. There is a very good reason and a lot of utility to carry a fixed blade knife.
Oh, absolutely.
Operationally,
absolutely.
Just for utility purposes and the types of things you need to cut.
Yes, yeah, and they've transitioned from a 12-inch fighter now to what they call an EDC, an everyday carry.
Right.
And it's probably one of my best sellers, but it's a 6-inch knife, 6-inch blade, or a 6-inch knife with a 3.5-inch blade, and handle enough. You can carry it horizontal, you can carry it concealed, and I see a lot of guys carrying those today, and they use them like a pocket knife.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what they're comfortable with, or we're comfortable with. That it's that fixed blade, and if I do need to use it for offense or defense, then yes, I've got a fighting knife that I can have, and even down to the little neck knives. I made a couple out of some scraps one time, and people just scooped them up.
Yeah.
And guys bought them for their wives. They can wear them
Yeah.
when they're running or at the gym or grocery shopping, like a necklace, and it's just a very small, very sharp blade that they can use for whatever. And I studied that thing, and then talking to John Horgan, but they came about back in the 1800s with the mountain men, and they were called a vest knife. And they made these little blades that they wore around their neck, and they used them to pop the cap off their muskets.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was faster than to get their big buoy
Right.
out. But that's where the neck knife came from. I thought that was pretty cool, But yeah, so there's just so many different types of blades and technologies and steels, and down to the handles or scales of the knife. So it depends on what fits and what you're looking for, what your job is, or hey, I like to collect them. Folders or
Yeah.
Just to go a little bit deeper into like the process, because you've gone through this yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the techniques with we talked about Damascus steel. I'd like to go a little more into that. And I mean, starting at the beginning, like you mentioned, you wanted to learn how to make knives using a cold forge.
Yes.
I don't even know what that is.
Yes.
Could you explain what a cold forge is?
Yeah, it's a pan, a steel pan, probably 3 foot by 3 foot, and and then it'll have a place where you can induce air. So now we use blowers. Back in the medieval times, they
Billows,
used
right?
big billows.
Yeah.
Hand ones to small ones, and and horseshoers use the same thing back when they would form horseshoes and hot shoe. And that's kind of where I started back years ago, learning to shoe horses and to shape that shoe and to put it in that small forge and hammer forge that thing to fit that foot. But yeah, so it's about that size, and you put coal in it, or charcoal, and then you get that lit, and then you induce air, which you need to heat that coal up to the temperatures that you need. So 15 to 1600 degrees to heat that steel, so you can hammer it and shape it into what you need. As far as welding steel, so for Damascus, you need 2200 degrees minimum. So that gets more into the propane induced heat, things like that. But they still did it 1,000 years ago when they were making Damascus in Syria and places in the Mideast. Yeah.
You told us a story before the show, and I think it's a great story. I'd like you to repeat it, but we were talking about a known Templar rendition operation when it came to Damascus steel.
Yes. So when the Crusades began in the late 11th century, late 1000s, so the Crusaders were fighting against the Mideasterns, the Muslims, and they found that they had better steel in their swords. So I don't know how many years it was, in the 12th century, but the Crusaders and the Templars were like, okay, we need some better steel for our weapons. So they sent a little clandestine unit into the Mideast, Syria, around there, and kidnapped 2 of their master sword makers and brought them back to France, Europe, and learned how to make this Damascus steel, which was, they had, different ores and different materials, and that they could learn, where to get those, how to get those, and then make that steel that the people they were fighting into their steel. So yeah, it was very interesting to learn about that. Now they sent a special ops unit to go do a kidnap and bring them back.
So when you make a knife out of Damascus steel, what's your methodology? How do you do it?
Yeah, so I learned to take 1080 or 1084 steel. So your good knife steel has a very high, and let me get this straight through. I'm no expert. I'm still learning this. I've only been doing it about less than 2 years now. But I'm hungry for knowledge, and I want to learn this stuff. And again, that's why I went to the best in this country that I could find. So I'll take a 1080, a high carbon steel, and then 15N20 steel. So that's a high nickel content. So, and then I'll make a sandwich. And it'll be, say I'll use 20 layers. So I'll alternate high carbon steel, so 1080 and then 15N20, 1080, 15. So I get 20 layers, okay? And then I weld that up with an arc welder into about 6 inches long. Stack will be about 3.5 inches thick and then 1.5 inches wide. Is about the standard to start a Damascus billet. Okay, I'll put that in the forge. I heat it up to 2200 degrees. Then I pull it out, and then I'll set that weld. I have a coal iron press. So after I hammered my first 80-some layer Damascus knife, after 2 days of 10 hours a day hammering the steel and folding it, cutting it, folding it, heating it, cutting it, folding it, into 80, I think it was 84 layers, maybe 80 layers. So I bought a press. So with these, there's power hammers and then there's presses. So this press, I have a 16-ton press. So I can put that steel in this press and I can smash that steel down, okay? So the first thing you have to do is you have to set that weld. So it's not a real aggressive, smash on that steel, but it's just bumping it through that billet to set that weld, okay? And then I take it out, put it back in the forge, and then I'll start forging it, all right? So what you do when you smash that steel is it stretches it out, and then it makes it a little bit wider. And there's different techniques that you can use, press or a power hammer. A power hammer just does so much more, in my humble opinion, because you can, and I've used both. I've learned to use both. And one of these days I'll get a power hammer. So, but yeah, so there's more techniques you can use. You can turn it different ways and then turn it on edge. But I love my press, and it does everything that I need to do, or any of the guys and gals that come to my forge to make Damascus. So I'll smash that out, and again I'll start with 20 layers. Let's say I want an 80-layer Damascus blade, and it gives a very nice pattern, and so I'll do that 20 layers, and then I'll pull it out, I'll cool it off, I grind it down, clean it up, then I cut it in half, and I fold it, and then I re-weld it again. So I'll do that until I have 80 layers or 160 layers, or I have one knife that's 1,600 layers. I have a couple of those daggers that are probably 3,000 layers, because we cut it and folded it, cut it and folded it over days, and forge weld it back together, and then you come up with these just beautiful patterns. And there are guys out there and gals that have, they've really, they can do some of the craziest patterns that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it's how you put it together. There's mosaics. John Horgan's probably the master on Turkish. I think it's called a Turkish twist. But just these incredible patterns.
So forgive my ignorance. When you see the pattern in the Damascus steel, is that the layers that you have layered on top of each other, and then you've grinded it down
different layers
so that you're seeing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the steel with the high nickel content, will come out brighter. Mm-hmm. So what happens is when we finish it, we get that knife forged out, and then we cut out the shape, or we hammer forge it into a shape that we're going to have, and then we grind it, and then once we get to that near that finished blade, then we're going to put it in ferric acid. Okay, and that's what darkens the high carbon steel, which really makes it pop against that high nickel steel. It'll be the brighter color in that steel, shiny, I guess you would say. So, and then there's different techniques. Some guys will buff it to mirror polish, and really make that stuff pop.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting because I've always known I've known what a Damascus steel blade looked like. I can see one and say it's Damascus, but I never knew how it's made or what made it Damascus.
I didn't either. I didn't have a clue till like a year and a half ago.
I mean, they're beautiful blades, and the blades you've brought here, and we're going to show you guys some of these. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, when we start showing these blades, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself to like come to YouTube and check out the videos because they're beautiful, and also go to your website.
Sure.
What's your website again?
Bladesforbrothers.com.
Bladesforbrothers.com, where you can see like all of Gravy's stuff. So
and before we get a little deeper into the knives, do you want to talk about Blades for Brothers
Sure.
and where you're going, what this is all evolving into?
You bet. So it was last November, and I got to thinking about it, and I mean knife making has just been such therapy for me, and it's a happy place, where I can go. And talking to my wife about it, and I says, I want to give back. How can I help other vets, first responders, family members? So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start a nonprofit. So I talked to a couple friends of mine, and we found Blades for Brothers was out there. So I took it and what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, made that my nonprofit and got a website up. And our mission is to bring in vets, first responders, family members, and we teach them how to make a knife.
Mm-hmm.
And we offer a safe place where they can come, we fellowship, and we tell stories, and we learn something new. We learn art, or we learn a skill. And, and I tell them, hey, just use your imagination. What tool do you want to make? What knife do you want to make? Or you want a fillet knife? You want a skinner? You want a fighter? Whatever the case. Again, I'm no expert. I don't have a clue what I'm doing, but I'm having fun doing it.
Well,
And,
I would say your knives say different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but
So what for you? Like, what are your favorite types of blades? Like, what types of blades are you really drawn to?
I love the Dagger. And not many people do, because it's very, very difficult to grind a Dagger. But yeah, and one of my knives, and I name my knives to honor guys that I served with or guys that I knew. My Bob Fighter, I named after Bob Horrigan.
Yeah.
And Bob and I were very, very good friends. He was killed in action in 2005 out in western Iraq. And his twin brother, John Horrigan, is just a phenomenal, I don't know what he is, but his knives, his swords, his art is just unbelievable. And yeah, and I owe a lot to John. He's helped me quite a bit. I know he probably hates it every time my number comes up on his phone, because I've called him and asked him, and Bill Harsey and Steve Schwartzer and Chris Williams and all these. Kyle Lamb is another one. Kyle had just started making knives too, about the time just before I did, and I'd call him and bug him all. Hey man, what about this? He's like, Gravy, you're so stupid, man. Just go have fun. I was like, yep, roger that. But Kyle, a phenomenal knife maker. Go look at his stuff. But yeah, all these folks are just open arms. But yeah, the fighter is, I really love that. My skin, I just love them all. I mean, the Dagger's very challenging, and it takes a lot of focus and a lot of concentration to get those grinds right. And again, I've got buckets and buckets of steel that I've practiced on and ground, and then I'll go to.
You have neglected somebody who taught you how to do sexy knives, and that's Greg Medford.
Greg Medford, yes, Medford Knife and Tool. Greg's a former Marine. I've known Greg for many, many years. Phenomenal knife maker. And, yeah, go check his stuff out. He's helped me quite a bit. I've taken my knives to Phoenix and says, all right, tear them apart. And he will. And that's just how we are. It's like our debriefs and our ARs after a mission. I don't care what I did right. What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
How can I do this better?
Yeah.
Make me a better knife maker. Help me understand what I need to do. Yeah.
You know, it's.
Thank you.
You say that it's a very open community and that people will just teach you, but I also believe that it's a testament to you, to who you are as a human being, to your service and everything else, that you can literally just go sit at the feet of these masters of the industry, and they are willing to, because I'm sure that they're willing to, like, if I were to call them and say, hey, I want to make a knife, they'll be like, get bent. Yeah.
Frank call.
Yeah. Wrong number.
It sounds a little bit like there is something to, like, this is the sensei, and they're looking for a protege that takes it seriously.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, and they've told me that Jim Poor, Jason Knight, other world-renowned knife makers, they're like, your excitement excites me.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
Right.
And I know, and I get it, but that's who we are, and that's where we came from in our former professions as warriors, and that, I want to do good at this. I want to be the best.
Yeah.
And they get that from guys like, once they kind of learn who we are, and
Yeah.
get to know us, and they're like, oh, yeah, man, I heard about you. You crash helicopters out in the desert. I was like, no, man, I got shot down. I didn't crash. They still joke, with that. But
Now, Blaze for Brothers has chapters in different parts of the country, right, where people like veterans and first responders can go and.
that's
and
my
learn this.
strategic plan.
Okay.
Dave. But good, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That's my, and again, we're in the infancy stages of Blades for Brothers. There's another forge in South Texas that is doing this, and I've talked to the guys that run it, and all over the country. But I need to get out and network better, but I want to have chapters all over the country for Blades for Brothers. So if a vet or a police officer or firefighter from New Jersey calls and says, hey, I want to make a knife. Well, they can't afford to jump on a plane and fly to Graham, Texas. And, so that way I can, hey, there's 2 knife makers within 20 miles of you. Let me contact them, and I'll hook you guys up and, do the vetting process.
Yeah.
And hook those guys up. So that's my... Yeah, that's a strategic plan for the near future, is to get, and they don't have, these knife makers, they're not vets, or some of them are, but they're like, send them to us, man, have them call me, tell them come hang out for a couple of days, and just, we'll make a knife or they can watch, or, whatever the case, so.
Yeah.
What is it about knife making that you found like therapeutic? I'd really like to hear sort of, what's the mental state that it puts you in when you're doing that?
Focus. The focus, the intensity, and then to take a raw piece of raw material, a raw piece of steel, and turning it into a knife, a blade, a tool, and then I would say, and the attention to detail, and people get on me a lot because they're like, you don't worry about that, man, just and I talked to Chris Stroop a lot, another phenomenal new knife maker, knife company, Stroop Knives, and I'll call Chris and bug him. He's like, no, just grind that to 120, you're good. And I was like, no, man, I got to go to 400, on my grind, and I got to make it look. No, you don't. Just stop. So, but that's the focus and oh goodness, just the meaning of it.
Right,
and it gives me a mission.
Yeah.
And it's a hobby. I mean, it's not a business for me. My wife would laugh, and my wife would beg to differ.
It is a business.
She comes out at 1 o'clock in the morning and says, honey, it's time to come to bed. I'm like, oh, it's dark out. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gravy's being humble. It is a business, and we'll show you that here in a second. The other thing I want to mention, something you told us before the show, is that you went to go see a neurologist, right? And
Yes,
that
yeah.
it actually improved.
Yes. It improved my test scores based on the prior 6 years is when I started to see him, Dr. Brett Osborne in Florida. And I go see him every year. A foundation sends me that supports vets with TBI and PTS. And, yeah, that guy's phenomenal, and I highly recommend him if you get a chance to go and see him. But the last year when I went, he said, man, because the first part of my when I'm there, cognitive testing and a lot of testing, memory and things like that. And he walks in later that afternoon. He goes, "Hey, Greg, your test scores are off the chart, man." He said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Don't stop."
That's amazing.
And yeah, and he looked at Edie and he goes, "What's he doing?" And at the time he says, "Well, he finished writing a book and he started making knives." And he goes, making knives. Okay. Art, geometry, and he starts naming all these things that help fire all these things in our brains.
Yeah.
And to give us focus.
Yeah.
And to give us a mission.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're looking for, man.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
And, it's interesting because I remember when, I went to go see a TBI specialist, they're like, look, we recommend that you try to learn some music,
Sure.
learn how to play music or learn a language. Like, you have to find something to like start your brain back up.
Yes.
And it sounds as though this is an overlooked field
It
for
is.
people who are suffering from TBIs and things like that. It's a creative endeavor that maybe if they're not, don't want to learn the guitar or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as warriors, I mean, what's better than going hammer and steel?
Right. Right.
Yeah. It's like, I want to make something.
Yeah.
Well, it's physical too. I mean,
Yes,
it wakes you up. There's a physicality
Yes, it
to
is.
it.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yes. It gets hot.
Yeah.
You got the forge going, and here we are, me and my knuckleheaded brother Marine out. It's 150 degrees probably in August in Texas. We're forging steel, man. It's like, drink water.
Right.
Water. Edie's running out there with Gatorades and body armor's like, you guys need to hydrate. Okay, yeah, we're doing it.
See, you were, and as I recall, you were a big IPSC shooter too,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, did you find that as a shooter as well, the focus that goes into
Absolutely.
each shot?
Absolutely. Yeah, I shot USPSA and then tactical 3-gun and shot professionally for a while. I shot with the AMU. To this day, I'm like, why did you guys bring me up? But anyway, yeah, it's focus, and you're getting trigger time and breaking down a stage, and all the things that go with that. I just recently got sucked into this 22 world, shooting 22s.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have not had so much fun in my life. I mean, Jim Poor, Bill Poor, Dan Warren, these guys in West Texas pulled me into that rabbit hole, and yeah, I got a 22 rifle, and we're shooting out to 250 yards with 22s.
What's the 22 rabbit hole like? How's that appealing as opposed to like long range or what you were doing before?
It's cheap, man. A box of 22s is $8. You get 50 bullets, and you can go have a blast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're shooting steel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're shooting steel. 75 yards. The target's 3/8 inches by 3/8 inches. I'm not kidding. Yeah, and 250, they're just, I don't know but I'm like, man, you are evil, dude. The guy that owns this range, you know, but oh my gosh, we have so much fun. Yeah, the 22s they're a hoot. Yeah, they are. Yeah, shooting is, it's, I think, again, I still love to shoot and I still love to train, but a guy quoted me one time. I was doing a class for some SWAT guys, and I had some writer out there, but I said, shooting is the most perishable skill a human has. Mm-hmm. We use all of our senses, we use all of our muscles, and thinking through this. I mean, just the simplest engagement. You have to think about it. You have to stop and think. And hey, is my stuff ready? Am I loaded? Just going through all those things, just like a USP or IPSC match. Every time I walked up to the line, I did the same thing every time and made sure what's the loudest sound in a gunfight. Click.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, yeah, it's very much parallel, but it's expensive nowadays, man.
Yeah, yeah.
It's getting really expensive.
Yeah.
Like the ammo is just
And,
crazy.
and with the knife making seems like a little bit different in the sense that it's a craft or a skill, but there's also an artistic side to
Yes.
it as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's a hobby. I mean, a lot of the guys that have come through in the last just few months that I've met and wanted to learn and get started, and it's a hobby for them. Man, they're just making beautiful blades.
Yeah.
Matt Chupp, yeah, and a couple other guys are just, yeah, it's crazy, man. And it's I'm very driven, and I love to teach and I love to instruct. I don't know how good I am at it, but it's just something that I want to help them and help them overcome the dragons and demons or whatever is chasing them. But yeah, it definitely helps. It helps me, and I know these other guys have helped too.
One thing that is really amazing about your knives in particular, I think, is for the selection that you have, aside from just the ones you make, but is the history that you put in them.
Yes. Yeah, it's so when I got shot down, I somehow got into my possession the 12 barrels off my miniguns, okay? And I carried them around for years. And actually, there were some knives made. Greg Medford did this, and I met with Greg, I think it was about 2010, and he was brand new, getting started. I mean, his shop was probably not even as big as this building. Now it's just, it's a mega manufacturing, world-class facility. But I told Greg, and I'd approached some knife makers. I said, hey, what do you think? Oh, you're stupid, or no, I don't have time. No, it can't be done. And so I sat...
Making the barrels into knives.
Yes, taking those minigun barrels and making them into a knife, some type of knife. And Greg looked at me and he was like, I'll do it. I said, okay. So he did, and he made some Damascus blades out of it, a folder, and I think it's called the TFF5 was the model number back then. And I think we only got like 13 or 14 knives out of the whole thing. And God bless Greg Medford, man. He spent 2 years on this project trying to find somebody that could hammer forge the steel. Then nobody knew about we knew they were 4130 steel that have a lot of chromium. They've got chrome lined barrels, so that has to be bored out. But yeah, so I had some folders made, and he gave me some of them, and I took those and I gave them to the guys that were with me on the ground that day I got shot down. Yeah. And so I had some of that steel left, some of those barrels left, and I got into knife making. I was like, okay, I want to do something cool with this. So I met Steve Schwartzer. John Horgan introduced me to him because I asked, who's the Yoda of Damascus steel? Steve Schwartzer. And so I met Steve. I told him my story, and he goes, you're coming to my shop in Florida. I said, yes, sir. Roger that. So I coordinated with Steve, took the steel out there. It was last September. And had the minigun barrels. I already had chopped them up in about probably 1-inch lengths. And then I'd already drilled out the chrome liner in those barrels. I wanted to be ready. I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to get to work. And so we started. So we welded those pieces of barrel up, got a billet, and then I was there on September 11th last year. And he and his wife, Laura, they had a chunk of World Trade Center steel. I mean, a big chunk like that, about that thick, that they gifted to me on 9/11, on that day. And they had a plan. And I was like, and I love those guys. They're just amazing. And Laura, his wife, is an incredible knife maker. She is very gifted. So I chopped that steel up, and I started to forge weld the barrels, and I spent 2 days. There've been some people that say they can do it or said they could do it, and I had my doubts because simply, one, the steel's very difficult to forge because of the chemical compound. It has a lot of chromium in that steel. For barrels to make them last, and the heat that goes with those gun barrels. So I spent 2 days 2 days forging those little pieces of gun barrel, and we welded them up, stuck them in the forge, got them heated up to 2200 plus degrees, pulled them out. There's a great big bubble growing on the side of it, and I was like, oh no. And Steve looks at me and goes, go pound it. So I put it in the press, pound, smashed it back in the forge. I did that for 2 days, 10 hours a day.
Wow.
Just on that little piece of steel.
Wow.
So we got him to forge weld. And what it was is that, what in his theory and what we learned is that you have to burn those chemicals out of that steel and keep the high carbon in place.
Right.
Okay. So we burned the chromium out, and then we finally got a billet made, and then took the World Trade Center steel, sandwiched it in, and then spent a day forging that. We got about 100 man hours in just making the original billet of minigun barrel and World Trade Center steel. Yes. And I got enough steel out of that to I made 4 blades that, in my mind, I said, okay, these have very, very historical meaning to them.
Right.
And there's no more of this left on the planet.
Right.
I mean, there isn't. And I made it.
Yeah.
And Steve Schwartzer. So then I get them back. I get back home. I got my billets made. I had 4 designs. I had the Leon. It's not quite as big as a Bowie, but it's bigger than a fighter. So kind of a mid-size.
Uh-huh.
And so I cut that piece out, and I want to make a dagger. So I got that cut out. And then my Bob design, a fighter, and it's got a Purple Heart. I made the handles out of Purple Heart wood, and then I embedded 2 of my miniature Purple Heart medals on each side of the handle. So it's the Purple Heart fighter, and then a mini Bob, so my EDC, all out of that original billet of steel. Now, when I cut that out, I had pieces of that steel, and I kept them. So I made those 4 knives, and I made those to auction off and to raise money to help other nonprofits and help Blades for Brothers and, help other folks. So so I took those pieces and I made some more daggers out of those pieces. What we had to do, and Jim Poor, Flatland Forge, helped me with that. And I'd talk to you guys about that project. And I think Dimitri asked me, he's like, we want 10 daggers. And I said, yeah, you and everybody on the planet. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Dimitri's all about go big or go home.
Go big, go home. And I said, well, I might have enough steel left for 5. I said, let me do some calculations, because I had to have help. My little shop, I don't have the equipment, power hammers and all the other things to get this mission done. But man, I was like, I have a mission and I'm gonna do it, because I'm not letting you guys down. I'm not letting Jack, Dave, Dimitri down.
Well, let's not keep people waiting here. Which knife? You brought a whole collection here. What do you want to show people first?
Oh, probably the big, one of the 2 original blades there. So I had
So I think Deke is he in frame? Because Dee's going to use our $10,000 focus feature. So it's this camera here, Gravy?
This one?
Yeah, this one. So if you want to kind of...
Yeah, so this is one of the 4 originals, and this one I named Leon after Master Sergeant Leon Hansen, my good friend. He was a fire supporter in B Squadron at Delta. Took his life in 2015. So the sheath was made by a friend of mine, but I wanted to incorporate. So this is a piece of leather off of my boot that I was wearing the day I was shot down. So they incorporated that. And this is 1,600 layers of Damascus steel that I made with Steve. And there's 4 different patterns in this knife. I mean, it's incredible. I made the handles or scales for this knife because I was thinking, okay, how can I make this thing just out of this world crazy? So I found some forms and I used epoxy. But in these handles, so there's a, and again, this is all recovered from the crash site when I was shot down in 04. So this is a 7.62 bullet that came from my minigun ammo. This is a 7.62 link that I smashed and put it in there. This is a button off one of the 7.62 rounds. And when I was cutting these off of this old burn up brass, I looked at it and I was like, huh, Lake City, 1974. I was carrying ammo that was made 1974. If you know how to read the ammo buttons. And then there's a piece of the main rotor that I cut out. I have a piece of the main rotor. And then on the other side is a piece of the T-tail on this side of the handle. And then there's a tan piece. That's a piece of my uniform, my flight suit that I was wearing, that I incorporated into this handle. And it probably took me, I think, 8 tries to get this. Again, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I'd get on YouTube and look and read and research. But yeah, so this is the Leon, and
Maybe your mother-in-law helped you.
that was the Purple Heart knife.
Oh,
She put her finger. Yeah, so in the Purple Heart knife, I just epoxied. I'd recessed those miniatures into the handle, into the wooden handles, and I brought it inside, laid it on the bar for the epoxy to set up. And God bless my mother-in-law. She came in, she goes, "Oh, that's pretty." And she put her finger right in that wet epoxy. And I was like, "Oh, man, no." I left it. It's still there today.
All part of the gravy history.
Yes.
So you've had, because not just the quality of the blade and like how, and it's an amazing like knife, like just the way it feels in the hand and everything. But you've had this appraised by people in the industry.
Yes.
And with all the historical significance and everything, they've told you that this knife appraises out around $100,000, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. Like there are things, the things that you incorporate into some of your knives are like, if you want to own a piece of history, this is it.
This is it, man. Yeah. There's.
No, I love that it's not just a knife. It has it's very much Greg.
It's
in there.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a piece of me.
Yeah.
And
leather from your boot, part of your flight suit, like the rotor is incredible.
yeah, main rotor,
Yeah.
T-tail. Those pieces wound up in the back of my truck one day. I got there, but they came home.
Did you want to see that one?
Yeah, and then this is the 6-gun dagger, so that I did, and this is from the same steel. We hammer forged this, and again, it was my.
I hope that people will see that Damascus, like it's.
Blurs it out.
Oh, does it? Okay.
I thought you were videoing.
No.
Yep. But I like the coffin handle. A bit of history about the coffin handle. It originally was on the buoy, so the guy that came up with the coffin handle was a good friend of Jim Bowie's, and that was one of the original handles on the buoy knife, because they said this blade will put you in the coffin. And I was like, okay, that's good enough for my knife. But yeah, I went down to John Horgan's, and he helped me a bunch with my final grinds. And again, the Dagger is the hardest knife to grind. I mean, all these lines match up, and I was really, really proud of this blade. And yeah, it's a hidden tang on this one, And yeah, because I kind
And
of screwed it up.
The red has some significance too, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the pins and all my knives, the pins I use look like the end of a minigun barrel. So it's got 6 little barrels on it. And then the red comes from our red 6. We're known, B Company, First 160th, are known as the 6 guns because of the 2 miniguns that we carry on the AH. And then the red designates our red 6, and then the blood of those that have gone before us and that have sacrificed. So yeah, I try to incorporate history and things that I think about. Yeah.
And then you also had this one appraised out, right? Or,
Yes.
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 And what did they tell you that this one appraised out at?
Oh
recall?
man, yeah, they said 50 to 60 grand, and they asked me, you know, when I first I showed these 4 blades to different masters, and they says, well, what do you want for these? And I said, man, if I could get 3 or 4 grand for all of them, and they were like, you're stupid, man. No, these are history.
Yeah.
This has a World Trade Center steel.
Yeah.
It has minigun barrels that killed a lot of terrorists. No, you knucklehead.
And that's something that we may have left out is the steel, the Damascus steel. If you can see it folded in there, it is World Trade Center steel, steel from the World Trade Center, you know, and miniguns.
Yes. Yeah. My minigun barrels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
From tail number 364, and then these first 4 I serial numbered all 4 of them, but I used my tail number 364 and then 1 through 4. So it's 364-1-2-3-4. So yeah, and then it's got my name, my logo, which is a Crusader shield, and then an American flag.
yeah. They're amazing.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So now, D, the blaze that D made you make.
Compelled you.
You gotta make these. I was like, oh gosh, man.
I'll get these ones out of your way.
So they're all a little varied,
Yes. Yeah.
but they have similar traits. They're the daggers.
Yeah, he picked the hardest one.
Yeah.
Thanks, D.
Good
I
job,
was like,
D.
well, go to my website. look
Jack
at
and
my
I both said
design.
definitely no daggers.
Yeah. Okay, so buddy's half a word, huh?
But and I mean they're beautiful. I don't know. Can you see D on the camera? Can you see the Damascus, the patterns in these?
If Greg holds them up, I have them on like a tight shot.
Not you, Dave.
Like because they have different patterns and they're just
Yes.
stunning.
Yeah.
And there are
you-
six of these, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I had enough. I mean, materials are just hard to get nowadays, but I had, so this all G10. I use G10 in all 6 of these. So it's a very, very strong composite that's used in a lot of things, but knife handles, firearms, different things out there in the industry today. But this stuff's harder than woodpecker lips. And it's very durable. You know, acid won't hurt it, weather, any of those things. But I actually had this G10 made for one of the knives I did with the original company in Dallas makes this. But it's red and black, and I thought it would really, I made 2, put these on 2 of the daggers, and then the other 4 daggers had the black G10. But yeah, I like
Really nice.
The black again designates, you know, that's where we operate. We operate at night, and we are night stalkers, and you know, we fight at night. We are the world's premier night fighters in our communities. But this particular, let's see, yeah, this is a random Damascus here that Jim Poor helped me with. I went out to his shop because he had the equipment and he had, you know, logistics and support to make this stuff. And you know, I made this steel, I cut them out, I ground them all right there at my shop in Graham, Texas. These 6 I numbered WS, Whiskey Sierra, for war steel, and 1 through 6. So they're laser engraved, and these all have certificates of authenticity for each knife. That's a random. This was I did a Canister Damascus on these. It was just something different, something I thought about. So I took pieces from the original billets, and I used a 4-inch by 4-inch square tubing. Okay, that's my canister, and it was about 2 inches tall. And then I cut these pieces in about 1.5 inches, and I stacked them in this canister. And then I poured high carbon powdered steel inside that canister. And it's got a bottom and a top. I welded it up tight, and then I put it in the forge. And then you forge that canister to welding temperature, 2200 plus degrees. And then I pull it out, and then I start forging it, start hammering. And I hammered it into a billet. I hammered 6 billets. Again, took several days. And but yeah, these just came out. These are phenomenal. But all this steel in here is World Trade. The darker steel is lower carbon steel, so that's minigun barrels, and then World Trade Center steel.
And that's why the pattern has more of like a horizontal look to it.
Yeah, and it's how I hammered it.
Yeah.
It's how when I took it out, we stretched it, and I had to get it at least because these are full tang knives. I mean, you can see the pattern all the way through, but it had to be 2 inches wide. So a lot of care had to be taken into getting that steel the right width, the right length. Because if it's too short, then you're screwed. And I couldn't get the blade that I needed to get.
That's a beautiful design.
Yeah.
And again, I went and when I started making daggers, so I went and researched, and I looked at the OSS daggers, and I went and looked at the Fairbairns, and the only thing for me is a point of index. So the original daggers had a completely round handle on
Yeah.
it. Well, how do you index that
Right.
knife? It's like a 1911.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I said, I'm going to go with a coffin handle or a flat handled dagger. So at night, whatever the case, I can index that knife as I'm sneaking up on that sentry. And so that's why I chose that. The length is in my medical research. So it's 5.5 inches to the aorta in the center part of our body in a frontal attack. So I included outerwear, and so I made the blade 7 inches to ensure that if I do go in, and I know, man, that people are like, dude, you're
News
crazy.
you can use.
You're thinking too much about it. I was like, no, man, that's how my brain works.
Right.
I want to get that aorta when I go in through the front.
Well, it's designed to be practicality.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a fighting knife.
Yeah.
And
The Fairbairn Sykes knife, it didn't have a crossguard either, did it? I'm trying to remember now.
no, they did.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
Okay. I must be thinking of the Pentagon that SOG put out a long time ago.
It was a half tang knife with
Yeah.
I mean, they're great knives,
Yeah.
great blades, but this is my knife.
Yeah.
And this is my art, my style, But yeah, people tell you overthink things, man. Stop thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, and now these are the knives that you've done with World Trade Center steel and minigun steel. You also, for people who may not be high end collectors or investors,
Sure.
You also do beautiful knives that are not of such rare material.
No. The major steel I use is 80 CRV2. It's a very good knife steel. It's 80% carbon, and then it has chromium in it. So that adds to the hardness of the steel. The edge retention of that steel for a high carbon steel. Now I've learned. And just looking at other knife makers and just I look because I learn everything. And actually, a funny story when I drew up the fighter, so I want to call it the Bob. Well, it looks a whole lot like the Horrigan fighter.
Yeah.
and Bob developed that knife when he was in the unit, and every operator in the unit carries the Horrigan fighter. So I was like, man, I didn't know about copyright or if I can, can I even do this? So I called John. I said, hey, John, I've drawn a knife, and I love you. I love your brother, and it looks a whole lot like the Oregon Fighter. I said, is it okay if I use this design? He goes, man, you're stupid. And I said, okay, Ranger, Oregon. He goes, no, there's no, yeah, everybody copies everybody in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, thank you for asking. He said, you're the first guy that's ever asked if they could copy this.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, okay. So I made a few little changes, but again, it's to honor Bob and all the guys that we work with and have gone before us and will come, for the future. So, yeah, but that's kind of how I operate and how I think, and so it's. And then there's the mini bob. That's the EDC, the everyday carry, the
It's
smaller
like a
one.
6-7 inch.
Mm-hmm. Total.
Yeah.
Total length, and it's the mini bob. I got the gravy gutter, so that's my skinning knife.
Hunters
And
out
then-
there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and they range. The mini bob's 225 up to, but I'm slowly transitioning into
That's really cool.
into stainless steel. So why stainless? Well, gosh, it's faster to make. It's easier. The heat treat process is a lot better, and it doesn't rust. So a lot of my knives go to guys that military, police officers in austere environments, and from what I hear back from industry is like, hey man, these knives rust, or I got to keep sharpening, or well, stainless doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose AEBL. That stainless steel was invented in like 1954. It's an old stainless steel. It was originally used for razor blades. Yes, AEBL. And so now I'm transitioning into stainless knives. So, but the Rockwell hardness that's what they use to measure the hardness of steel. So my recipe for my hardening technique is about 57 to 58 Rockwell for my ADCRV or high carbon steel knives, and then stainless are 62 Rockwell. So they're very hard and they keep a good edge. And I'm told that my knives are extremely sharp, and some of the sharpest knives they've ever had. And I put a Band-Aid in every box that I send, and I've had probably 4 or 5 pictures sent to me. It's like, hey man, your knife's sharp. I was like, dude, no, I told you it's sharp. Yeah.
Do you want to show people these prototypes you're working on?
Sure.
For the folders?
I'd love
Yeah.
to. So this is my newest hobby. So Mr. Jim Poor, Flatland Forge, he called me one day, and I've been working with Jim because he's close. He's an hour and a half away. So he said, hey, I want to take a guy like you that doesn't have a machine shop, that doesn't have a mill, all these high-end toolings, to make a slip joint pocket knife. And I said, oh, okay. So I go out there, spend the weekend, and a couple weeks prior, I want to learn how to make feather Damascus. So it's a very popular Damascus steel for people that make folding knives. And Jim Poor feather Damascus is very, very well known. I mean, all the top pocket knife guys they buy the steel that he makes, the Damascus steel. So this is the very first one. It's literally 2 pieces of steel. So it's a blade, and I don't know if you can see that, but this is the feather Damascus that I learned to make. And then there's this piece here, and then I use G10 handles. So there's 4 pieces to this knife, not including the pins. So this is the very first one I made that weekend with Jim, and they're very difficult. Well, they're very precise because they have to be hand fit, hand ground, and Jim Poor has a jig, and there's other fellows, slip joint guys that have made jigs. Jim has his, and he gave me one of his, so I use this. Got a dial indicator on it, and when you're fitting this thing, you have to be within 6 to 8 thousandths an each. So in open and then half close, and then close. So you have to be 6 to 8 thousandths tolerance in each 3 of those positions.
Wow.
I was gonna say, Greg, that's like a pretty squared away first effort right there.
But
It's a beautiful blade.
that one's really hard to open. I've got
That is pretty baller.
yeah.
Yeah. This was the second one. This is a cat's claw that I made. This one's much smoother, and I was taught by the masters that make these, and there's a group in Texas. They're called the Slip Joint Cartel, and these guys are awesome. And they, Bubba Crouch and that whole crowd, Mr. Bill, but they're master slip joint pocket knife makers. This was the second one. It's a lot smoother. This one I forgot to polish the ends on it. I kind of got excited, but this one's a lot smoother. And but yeah, they're very light. And again, there's 3 pins. There's a pivot pin, and these are steel pins. Everybody carries a pocket knife, but and then this is, I did a little redesign on this. I moved. These are 1/8 inch G10. This is 3/16 G10. So I'm thinking thicker, a little stronger. Not much difference in weight, but I moved this pin back 0.125 to try to get a little bit less stress on this piece right here. And yeah, I think it's okay, but this one's a little bit easier to open. But the masters taught me, they said, your pocket knife, it has to be able to be opened by a lady. And I was like, oh. And a couple guys says, I lost sales because a lady couldn't open the knife.
Interesting.
Makes sense.
So yeah, we're refining this, and yeah, but they'll be. So yeah, this. I just love making these things.
Yeah.
And just again the precision, the focus on them, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, they're cool. They're simple, and and the average new knife maker can make these because you don't need a mill, you don't need a machine shop, you need a little grinder, and yeah, you can make a pocket knife, man. Slip joints, they're cool.
So we had you make 6 of these blades.
Dimitri did.
Yeah, Dimitri. Why didn't you tell us about this, Dimitri?
Oh gosh.
So are these going to be Team House exclusives that we sell through the Team House? Is that how we're doing this, Dimitri?
Yeah, the 6 daggers. Yeah.
With World Trade Center steel and minigun steel.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are beautiful, Greg. And I mean,
Thank
when listening to D talk about it and we'll get us tell us about all this. I had no idea what you were going to make or what it was
No
going to
kidding?
look like. No,
I thought you were charging this, man.
No.
This is beautiful.
Their contribution was we want daggers. So it's their fault.
No, D said you were just going to laser print some stuff out for us.
Water jet these things out, sharpen them,
No,
and they're good.
I honest to God, never could have envisioned something like this.
They're incredible.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of these blades. They're amazing.
You should be.
They're amazing. I had great help, but I had to, man. I couldn't have met this TOT without that help. So, but we did it. Plus or minus 30 seconds, right?
I mean, Jack just break out the checkbook because I think we should buy all these.
I'm thinking
Like-
of buying one actually for myself.
There you go. It's good to have a first customer.
So yeah,
Yeah.
one sale probably.
Yeah.
I might just go online.
And these are just for people, just so you guys know. They have Greg's brand on them, which is the Crusader Cross, and then they also have the Crusader Shield. Yeah, then they also have the American flag, and then they are numbered WS 1 through 6.
1 through 6.
Yeah,
Whiskey
there's only
Sierra.
six made. That's
War
it.
steel.
War steel.
That's what I named it. So it's stories on the website. So if they need to, refresh or go back, look at the other original 4.
And then these will also we will work it out because we haven't talked about what we're going to sell them for. But they will come with a
Certificate of authenticity.
right
Yep.
that will
Yeah.
say that it, everything that it is. And obviously these aren't your EDC knives. These are collectible. These are collectibles. I have so much greed in my eyes right
I know.
now.
Yeah,
I mean,
Greg has some great EDC knives on Blazer Brothers.
Yeah, if you want an EDC, I mean, definitely check out the Bob Mini Fighter. It's honestly one of my favorite knives out
Yeah.
there. It is an amazing knife.
Man, if I were still out there on patrol, I'd want to
I
carry
would.
one of these.
I
I'm
would.
just saying. I'm just
Oh,
saying.
I
Yes,
would
sir.
take. I would pack it. I would take it. I would never take it out on op because I'd be afraid to get like sand or scratched or whatever.
You're not going to scratch a bed. They're tools. They're meant to. If you wanted to or needed to, you could carry them. You could go stab some.
Dave,
bad
I'm going
person.
to pour you a little bit of this.
Okay.
You're going to like this stuff.
This is the Japanese.
Yeah. We're. You want some of that, Greg?
Me too, please.
Absolutely, man.
We have a couple questions real quick, Greg.
This,
Let me get
this
to
is
these.
the Nika coffee grain whiskey.
Oh, nice.
Very,
Cheers,
very
fellas.
smooth. Cheers, Greg.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, fellas. Thank
Gravy,
you.
so great having you back, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So Nationwood, thank you very much. Thanks, Jack and Dave, for making this pod. It's inspired me to enlist post-college grad. Unfortunately,
Wow.
Air Force Spec Recon has given the best pitch so far. That's not unfortunate. Look, you can't go wrong with Air Force.
No.
Best lifestyle.
They live the best. They eat the best.
Yeah.
They fly the most technologically advanced aircraft.
And I don't know anything about Special Recon.
That's what like it's evolved into.
Yeah. But I will say that CCT and pararescue,
I was going to say
they used to have the best training
Yeah.
pipelines
Yeah.
you could get.
Yes.
Like everybody would be jealous of their training pipeline.
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
I like, again, I don't know anything about Special Recon in terms of what it is now, but I know that Air Force back in the day, Air Force Spec Ops, you couldn't go wrong.
Yeah, AFSOC, I mean, by far produce, our CCT guys, our para guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would tell him to get serious, but then
Go to the Rangers. Be a Ranger.
Yeah.
But if he did that, and then when he gets in and he sees how the other side lives, he'd be pretty mad at me.
Yeah, he would.
The thing with
would.
Air Force Spec Ops is you can go like do all the Ranger stuff.
You can.
without
Yeah.
without
You
like
sure can.
without like sitting on a wooden stool with your balls out, just hitting it with a hammer for hours on end.
Yeah, putting quarters in trees,
Yeah, exactly.
pushing for a Coke. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
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 I saw it,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah. RI's throwing you M&Ms
Yeah.
on the Huey.
Yeah. Do you trying to eat his patrol cat because he thinks it's a pancake? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff E, thank you very much. Thank you for the great content on the awesome channel. Well, thank you, Jeff. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Yeah. So, somebody, this episode is just amazing. Thanks for bringing us the great content. And Mr. Coker, sir, so much respect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great episode about the knives, but it's also like a great expanded story about your transition out of military service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I think that's critical. It's
Yeah.
key. It's important that, yes, you can be successful.
and do
You
something
will be
different
successful.
else. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't care what you choose, but choose something. Reach
Yeah.
out to us.
Yeah.
Reach out. There's literally hundreds of foundations out there that can help you transition. And, don't ever give up. Just
Yeah.
never quit. Never quit, man.
Yeah, we've talked about this before the show that we've all lost people to suicide and kind of chasing that dragon and everything, and it's challenging in our world because all the things like in high school when they tell you about depression and people who are who are at risk of suicide, like all the signs that they say goodbye to people or they give all their stuff away. Like none of that happens in our community.
No.
Like you will talk to a guy one day
Yes.
and then the next day
gone.
there's no indication.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned that like finding this purpose and like you're bringing
Yeah.
vets down and showing them this
Yes.
stuff, like finding a new
awesome.
purpose, finding a new reason to
You
be.
Yes.
And I think it's really important too. It can't be understated just the neurological effects,
Yeah.
the advantages and benefits that you gained from doing this, because especially when we start going into blast injuries and TBIs, that sort of that neurological or whatever sort of cascade or deficiency, you know, however it happens, that you know, the brain. It's one of the things I say about hearing. When you start losing your hearing, you start losing your speech. You start
Yes.
losing your thinking.
Yes.
Things like that. And it's the same way with the TBI. It's not necessarily that exact thing, but the world gets
No.
darker and you don't exactly know why.
And you don't understand.
Right.
You don't understand physiologically, okay, what's going on with me? I know there's something.
Right.
But, okay, I need to reach out and get some help. Or
Right.
talk to somebody
Right.
or whatever the case.
Right.
Yes.
But here you found this hobby
Yeah.
that you hadn't even, you know, you had no. It's not like you wanted to be a writer or a musician. Like, you know, you
I didn't want to be a writer, and I wrote a book.
Right,
Thanks,
right.
Jack.
Here for you.
Yeah, yeah.
But you find this hobby that turns into not just a hobby, but you know, but a new business and also a means of therapy for you.
Yes, absolutely therapy. Absolutely. Helps my brain, helps me in my everyday life. I'm sleeping now. Ask my wife. And yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. It really is. And you know, and I'll just talk a little bit about Blades for Brothers. So about, I don't know, 5-6 weeks ago, my wife comes in on a Wednesday and says, we have this big 3-bay building, big, it's like 18-foot ceiling. She goes, you need to clean that building out. I was like, excuse me? She said, everything needs to come out of it. I said, okay. Called JJ, Jared Johnson. I said, hey, man, I need some help. He goes, okay, Sarge, I'll be there. So we spent the whole day. We cleaned the whole thing out. And then the next morning, Thursday morning, I'm in my little knife shop. The truck pulls up about 7:30, and I'm like, who's this guy? I look, it says spray foam insulation. So I walk out. You know, young kid. I was like, what do you want? He goes, well, sir, we're here to spray foam a building. On whose authority? and he's like, Miss Coker? And I was like, okay. So I start laughing. I was like, okay, come on, man. So, yeah, she had coordinated this. She got spray foamed. And then
So that Mrs. Coker can get some sleep at night.
And then she had one of the new knife makers, Matt Chupp, was a combat engineer. So she pulls him in and says, I need this framed, and this is my vision. And so we have a new shop.
Wow.
Being built. And we got a few of the walls up. It's going to be an amazing place. We have a bunkhouse. She planned a bunkhouse upstairs for vets, so when they come, they have a place to stay, a safe place. They can sleep, and you know we can work on knives or whatever they want to do. We have a huge hog problem in Graham, Texas, and we have feeders. So come make some knives. We'll go shoot pigs that night. You know, so if you want to deer hunt, whatever the case, but. Electrical is about halfway through, and we're out of money. So I made some knives, man, so we can raise some money. And we'll also help some other nonprofits for whatever we raise with these blades. And I love helping my brothers and sisters and their families, Gold Stars and all those folks. So, yeah, but we're excited that the shop is going to be absolutely phenomenal when it's finished, and it'll be a cool place. And I want you guys to come, even Dimitri,
I'd love to.
and I'll show you guys how to make a blade.
Dimitri didn't tell you what we wanted you to have in your shop, did he? He didn't like set up the architecture, did he?
No,
You end up with a jacuzzi.
no, we do have a pool, so if you come
There
in
you
the
go.
summertime,
Yeah, we definitely need to come down. That's a nice area too,
yeah,
where
it
you
really
guys
is.
are at.
It
so,
is.
yeah,
It's God's country.
yeah.
We have a question on Patreon.
Sure.
Can you give 1 or 2 tips for helicopter student pilots? Stay beautiful, Dave and Jack. Get a shave. Yes, Jack.
Oh, they hit me up, didn't
No,
they?
not you. For Jack, I think.
For helicopter pilots, So is he doing his, where is he in his training?
You just said, can you give 1 or 2 tips for helicopter student pilots?
Oh, okay. So he's a student. Yeah, continue through. I recommend, and I tell this to all the young folks that want to fly helos, it's much cheaper to do it in fixed wing, and then do your rotary wing transition. So go to fixed wing, get your privates, get your commercial, get your instrument, then transition to rotary wing because it's so expensive to run helicopters. It's probably 4 times the amount to run rotary wing. So that's one of the things I do. But yeah, make sure you get your instrument rating. If they're looking to go into the military, then yeah, that's going to be a huge check mark in that block when they go apply for that.
I don't mind.
Yeah, good question. Thank you so much. Yeah, I get a lot of questions from young folks that they're either started out in aviation and want to transition to the military, or they want to go into the Army, because the Army they're the only service that offers in high school to flight school. I mean, you can literally go from high school to, I think it's Fort Novacell now, but it used to be Fort Rucker. And we had 2 guys in my flight school class that are 18 years old.
Wow.
I'm not kidding.
Wow.
And, here we are, a bunch of older dudes. And once we got to where we could go off base for the weekend, they'd be riding skateboards because they're only 18. They couldn't drink beer. And we'd be like, see you guys later, But yeah.
Do you want ice?
No, I'm good. I'm fine. Thanks.
So these high-end knives, we need to find some collectors for
Yes.
the really high-end ones.
Yeah. I think they would be honored to own history, or anybody would be.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
there's no more of the steel left on the planet.
Yeah,
And there never will be.
yeah.
Yeah, I pray that, somebody would, be honored to own one of these pieces. And
Trust me, if I had the money, I would buy it. I would buy it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I would buy it in a heartbeat. It's the people are out there.
cool.
The people are out there. Maybe 60,000 of or 30,000 of our viewers can pay $2 each and share it.
sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it'll, right person, right place, right time.
Yeah.
Good Lord willing. And yes, they will.
Yeah.
They'll have new owners.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will have new owners.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So everybody make sure you check out Greg's episode to hear all about his time in the 160th, about his, getting shot down,
And other adventures. Beneath the dam. All the time.
I have all of those clipped. Yeah, on clips on the team
they're
house,
also in
so you can
clips?
check it out. Yeah.
So Greg's episode is episode 74. Plus, you can look for the clips, the shorts. Check out Greg's book. Buy it, download it. Death Waits in the Dark. 6 Guns Don't Miss. You can get that on Amazon. And check out bladesforbrothers.com.
Yes, sir.
Look, if you want some amazing, all the stuff is down in the links below. But if you want amazing knives, check out Greg's stuff. You'll love it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Arizona Knives, Brian. I've had the originals. They were kind of scattered about trying to raise money and get auctioned off. And I called him the other day. I was like, hey, man, I need these blades back. I need to take them to New York. He's boom, punched on it. But yeah, thanks, Brian, you guys. So yeah, we'll get there.
Awesome.
Is there anything else you're working on, or any place else anybody can find you that you want to point out?
No, I think, these pocket knives have just got me sucked in.
Yeah.
And I've got a new tomahawk design.
Oh, I'm
I
all
showed-
about that.
I do.
I am
I
all
showed
about
it to a
that.
couple guys, and they're like, "Okay, there's nothing out there like it."
Yeah,
So, I learned a few things when I was deployed.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just saying, not saying, but yeah, I think it'll be cool. It'll probably come this winter. Again, I've got a manufacturer that's Greg Medford has said he would help me with these, and I look forward to doing a team house knife or blade, whatever. Hey, maybe ask our viewers what would you like? Or
Yeah.
What would you like to see?
Yeah, so if we're gonna do a limited edition,
Sure.
or even maybe not even a limited edition,
No.
but maybe an EDC for the Team House.
Let us know down in the
Yeah.
comments what
Yeah,
you'd
what
like
kind
to
of
see.
blades are you
Yeah.
guys
You
into?
bet.
So
And
I'd be honored.
this Friday we will have William Yeski on the show, 82nd Airborne.
Oh yeah.
He wrote a book that I can't recall the title of off the top of my head. Good call there, D.
Yeah. Good D.
So we will have him here on Friday to discuss his book and his military career. So we're excited about that. And check out our Patreon. The link's down in the description if you want to get access to these episodes ad free. And that's really it. Unless
Wow.
Greg,
and
anything-
bonus
anything we're
episodes
forgetting?
where you get to hear Jack and I just shoot the shit.
I have so much to say about.
you have tea to spill.
Oh, I have a lot to say about my warrior.
Go on.
He's wonderful.
You heard it here first.
Thank you,
He's
dear.
amazing, and so I can't say fucking smart. I can say he is so incredibly smart.
You can say he's fucking smart on our channel. We're 18 and over. Yeah, we're 18 and over.
So fucking smart.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
You can't have a military channel where you drink on live stream and like
true.
not curse. Yeah.
He's a wonderful, wonderful man, and he is incredibly talented and
Thank you.
devoted to his community.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you guys didn't hear that, Gravy testament from his wife, which is really the toughest testament you can get, honestly.
Yeah.
That he's a wonderful, wonderful man, dedicated to the community, and just so fucking smart. And we agree with all that.
Yeah.
So
Solid
And he's good
endorsement.
at a
Yeah.
lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, and I'll close with, the knife making. So every penny spent on a knife goes back into Blades for Brothers, and it's 501c3. I have not spent one penny, one dime. Everything goes back into the shop, or it goes into steel or materials to bring vets in, grinders, whatever I can do to help these guys and gals and family members that want to do this or heck yeah, man. It's I don't need any money.
Honey, you keep saying guys and gals, but there's not been a gal yet.
No, there hasn't.
We're working on it.
We'll
But
work
I
on it.
appreciate so much that you say guys and
Yeah.
gals.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it may be a Gold Star mom and
Yeah.
a
Sister
child.
or who
yeah,
knows?
sister
Yeah.
or I just had a conversation with Russ Ripto, his sister. She reached out to me through social media, and I'd known Russ for years. He was the FSO for 375.
Yeah, he was in my
got
company.
killed at Haditha Dam. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Russ and I had a wonderful conversation with her for an hour and a half the other.
I met his father years ago.
Yes, Colonel Ripto.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I met him.
Super nice guy.
Yeah.
Like you never meet a bigger advocate of the Rangers than than Colonel
Hey,
Ripito.
Colonel Ripto. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, that was it was heartwarming, and I was honored that I could. She just wanted to know about Russ.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yes. I get people reach out to me all the time, and I'm honored to do that. Yeah. I told her, come down, make a knife. We'll do it.
it's
Well,
fantastic.
Greg, thank you again for
Thanks,
you and your wife making it all the way up here to New York.
Thank you.
And working on these, and we hope that we can help you
Yeah.
with all of this.
No, I'll help you.
Yeah. Well, we're excited about it.
Yeah. I'm very excited. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Gravy.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thanks for the daggers.
Yeah.
And more to follow, and we will see all you guys on Friday. So take care out there.
Adios.